Welcome along to Paper Talk. Over the next few minutes, we're going to take a look at what's making the headlines in today's papers. And to do that with us this morning are the Guardian's Jonathan Liew and the broadcaster Nubaid. Haroon, very good morning to you both. Lovely to see you. And we're going to start this morning with Chelsea and the Sun. And we've already told you all about their interest in Enzo Fernandez this morning. And the Sun's back page is in for Enzo. They reckon that the Argentine midfielder will arrive at Stamford Bridge next month as part of a £153 million spending spree. The Sun claim that a potential British record transfer deal is at an advanced stage already. Jonathan, this is quite the story. I mean, he's quite the player, young player of the tournament at the World Cup. Plenty of talent and a lot of money being talked about here in this deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty widely reported, actually, Chelsea's interest. Clearly, their owner, Todd Bewley, has been watching some of this World Soccer Cup malarkey. He's watched Argentina win. He says, who is that player? I really like him. How come we've never heard of him before? His advisor said, that's Lionel Messi. We can't afford him. So who's the guy who's passing it to him? And so obviously Enzo Fernandez has popped up. He's got a £106 million release clause. Benfica obviously won't want to let him go in January because they have a Champions League campaign of their own to pursue. But they will probably know that he is at the peak of his value. And if Chelsea can really stump up the cash, then they can make this deal happen in January. Kante's deal is up at the end of the season. Kovac has been playing through injury. Jorginho as well up at the end of the season. So it all kind of makes sense.
You can see that Chelsea are in this sort of frame of mind where they've once again started to believe that no deal is off the table, which is why a £153 million deal for Enzo Fernandez probably doesn't seem that crazy to the owner or the club. I think they're just heading in that direction now, whereby they need to have a little bit of a rebuild. I do wonder a little bit if Graham Potter is co-signing these deals, or if it is Todd Bowley saying, I would like this player, make him fit in the system. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with Enzo Fernandez. Wherever he ends up, I think there'll be a lot of pressure on him because of the price tag, but then also the fact that he's one of these World Cup gems, these players that come off the back of the World Cup, and suddenly his price tag is through the roof.
Are there any concerns for you, Jonathan, about signing a player off the back of an impressive display at an international tournament? Is that going to inflate prices, perhaps?
It's certainly going to inflate prices. It might well, inspire interest. But if you're a top class club, if you're a club that's aspiring to play cup finals and Champions League finals like Chelsea are, a World Cup, can actually, the sharp end of it can actually tell you quite a bit about a player's mindset. Everyone knows what Enzo Fernandez can do. He's done it in the Champions League. He's done it for Benfica. He's done it for River Plate. But seeing how he does in that cauldron, under the pressure of a World Cup final or a World Cup semi-final, that actually does tell you quite a lot about that player. And anyone who saw Fernandez at the World Cup will have liked what they saw.
Be impressed with them, could you? Let's turn our attention to the Daily Mail and Arsenal's pursuit of Mudryk. The Mail got into more detail as to why exactly Arsenal are targeting the man that has been dubbed the Ukrainian Neymar, which is quite a statement to start with. Nubaid, what has Shakhtar's sporting director had to say about Mudryk? Because we know the price tag is going to be high, and they really think that he is worth over £85 million or so. What's he had to say?
Well, the sporting director, first of all, is someone you've definitely heard of, Dario Serna. He believes that after Mbappe and Vinicius Jr., Mudryk is the best player in Europe in his position, which is heavy praise, but it might be praise to push a larger transfer fee. But I think there is a genuine belief at Shakhtar that this guy can go on to become one of the world's best players. And with Arsenal being a club that don't spend this type of money easily, especially under Edu's sort of guidance and Arteta's management, they tend to focus their cash on players they know that will definitely deliver. Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko, the list goes on and on. This one actually feels like a little bit of a wild card, a player coming over from a foreign league where the success rate isn't wonderful for players arriving from that division. For me anyway, there's a feeling that Arsenal are prepared to roll the dice on him because they certainly believe that Dario Serna might actually be right with his praise.
Yeah, and one of the things that might speed this up or grease the wheels certainly is that Mudryk has certainly shown a willingness to consider Arsenal. You know, there have been overtures. Arsenal have made an approach. There was an Instagram story from Mudryk recently where he was watching the West Ham game on his iPad. So you know, clearly that's got the rumour mill talking as well. So you know, it's one of those things where obviously the fee has to be thrashed out, but if the player wanted to happen and the buying club wanted to happen, there's not a huge amount you know, Shakhtar can do except really, you know, try and squeeze Arsenal for a top fee.
Yeah, that subtle Instagram post got everyone talking on Boxing Day, didn't it? Jonathan, tell us about the role as well. This is an interesting detail in this story, that Brighton head coach Roberto De Zerbi has actually played in Mudryk's development.
Yeah, so De Zerbi, he came to Shakhtar and Mudryk was out on loan. You know, that he was still a raw talent, you know, certainly a talent, but, you know, there were questions over his attitude, there were questions over his application. And De Zerbi famously said to him, you know, if you don't make it with me, you are not going to make it as a footballer. And, you know, everyone knows about De Zerbi's attacking style, you know, the way he loves players who can run at the opposition. But really, it's in terms of getting his attitude right, giving him responsibility, and I guess, you know, showing him what he can do to himself, and you know, showing him of his own potential and convincing him that he really can be a top player. That's what De Zerbi has done for him.
Take a look at the Daily Telegraph, where there is more transfer news this morning. They're reporting that Newcastle want to sign Brighton's Moises Caicedo and Leicester's Youri Tielemans when the January transfer window opens. I mean, according to the Telegraph, Jonathan, why is it that Newcastle are so interested in these two in particular? I mean, we know they're sat third in the Premier League. They've made a great start to the season, and it's vital they continue it. But why Caicedo and Tielemans?
Yeah, so you know, John Joe Shelvey is injured. They do have Bruno Guimaraes, as we know. They have Sean Longstaff in midfield, but they do also want a little bit of cover in that area. And apparently Eddie Howe, he wants a player who can basically slot right in, as you tend to in January. You want a player with Premier League experience. You want someone without too many adaptation issues. Caicedo and Tielemans, both high quality performers in the Premier League, and so those are the two that they appear to be targeting at the moment.
What I find interesting about this is I feel Newcastle would have gone for a midfielder in January anyway, but the fact they're going for Moises Caicedo, who's been linked to Liverpool very heavily, Klopp's an admirer, and Youri Tielemans, who's been linked to Arsenal, and I think a lot of people were convinced he'd join Arsenal. I think it tells you that Newcastle are starting to shift their direction in maybe their transfer targets, and maybe their belief system, and maybe the fact that they're now thinking top four is really on, like genuinely on. Let's go and get a midfielder from one of our rivals, and then build from that point onwards. If they get both Youri Tielemans and Moises Caicedo, I can't imagine they're going to be playing second fiddle to John Joe Shelvey at any point.
There's an interesting element as well, that with the Caicedo deal, that Brighton are apparently reluctant to sell to Newcastle after losing their director of football, Dan Ashworth, to them as well. So it all gets a little bit more complex there as well, doesn't it? Right, let's finish with the Daily Mirror this morning. And it's a headline you don't often see. Cristiano who? That's in reference to an interview that Christian Eriksen has actually done, where he claims that Manchester United have already moved on from the forward's controversial Old Trafford exit. He does say as well, though, that he was honoured to play alongside him. I mean, this Eriksen interview, Nubaid, was picked up by loads of media outlets. I mean, quite a controversial or quite eye-catching headline. But what's he had to say?
I mean, within that interview, he also has spoken about how sad he is that Ronaldo isn't part of the United journey under Ten Hag. And I think that's quite telling that, generally speaking, outside of outside of this sort of conversation, we've generally felt that Ronaldo has problems with teammates, but the fact that Eriksen's come out and he said a few things, but I think the main thing I took away from it is he's actually not that happy about the fact that Ronaldo isn't involved. That kind of tells you most players that have played with him, Garnacho's had a few things to say, Rashford's had a few things to say, are pretty upset that he's not around anymore. But at the same time, as Eriksen has said, we've now found momentum, we're now in full flow, and not that he hints that it's because Ronaldo's not there, but there is a feeling that United are ready to go without Ronaldo, and it's happened quite quickly.
To be honest, you'd have been, I think, surprised if Eriksen had said anything else. Football have this incredible capacity for moving on. When managers get sacked, when big players leave, they have this kind of tunnel focus. It's like in Dallas when Bobby Ewing steps out of the shower and basically the last 2 series have been a dream. That's kind of what United need to do with Ronaldo now. You know, they just need to. You know, Bobby Ewing has stepped out of the shower. He's taken his golden handshake, and they just kind of need to pretend the last 2 seasons didn't happen.
Jonathan, I won't lie, didn't get the Dallas reference, but you explained it beautifully, so I think we're all with you now. Jonathan, Nubaid, thank you so much for your time this morning. Always great to hear your thoughts and insights.